Hi everyone, thanks for checking out another InfoSec Hub video. Today we're going to talk about 8 different types of cyber attacks, and these are in the top 8, so the most frequently used by attackers/hackers. Without further ado, let's go to number 1, which is the phishing attack, something I see on a daily basis. And here you see the schematics or the scheme of things. So the attacker is sending a phishing link that's usually inside of an email. The user clicks on the link and it redirects the user to a certain website that's malicious and controlled by the hacker. Sometimes the user is asked to fill in some credentials like an email address, a possible password of a Microsoft service or a Google service. And the login looks almost identical as the one from Microsoft or Google, so you think that you are actually dealing with Google or Microsoft. Then you send that information through the malicious website to the hacker, and he collects the credentials, and then the hacker can use the credentials on the correct website. So as a way to mitigate those kind of attacks, always make sure that you have two-factor or multi-factor authentication enabled. Even though the hacker has your credentials, he still need some kind of access code to access your account. So that's one way to mitigate these kind of attacks. Ransomware, you also hear that quite often. Sometimes it's going through a pen drive, which is a removable hard disk basically. And the user is infected by ransomware either by clicking on something or maybe just as easy as connecting a USB stick to a PC. Make sure that it goes through the file browser. The document folder will be encrypted. My scans, my passports, whatever it is, he knows a certain set of values that is very valuable to the user and then encrypts it. So the user infected by ransomware, user data is locked, what I just talked about, let's say very sensitive information that you need on a day-to-day basis to work with, financial data, passports, you name it. And then the ransomware will demand money to unlock the data, to get it, back useful again for the user. And usually this happens with Bitcoin because it's barely untraceable, it's anonymized money, so you never know who you're paying. Then we have the denial of service attack, the DDoS attack. This is actually a very old way, and this only motivation of a hacker is to disrupt a website or a service. It can be used in various forms, and it always has a specific target. So the hacker is controlling bot or a botnet, and a botnet is basically a computer that's part of an army of computers that is infected, that's just waiting for the attacker to send it a certain task. And in this particular case, it's sending a request through an open DNS server or a server that doesn't lock the IP address of the bot. So it's a bit more difficult to do some analysis on it, where this attack originated from. And then all this traffic, and this is just one bot, but there can be thousands and thousands that all do a request at the target server at the same time, rendering it useless. So you can take down a website, you can take down a database server. This has been done with government websites. It has been done with politically motivated websites of political parties that the majority of people have something against. A lot of the time it's politically motivated actually. It don't need to be, but it can be. So this is basically how it works. The attacker controls a botnet, multiple computers, and at the same time, he just clicks. All these computers need to send requests to a server taking it down. Then the fourth, a man-in-the-middle attack. Man in the middle being a hacker in this case, and the user, and he's standing between the user and the web app. So instead of the user sending a connection request to a web app, let's say a website, the user is now sending the request to a hacker, and the hacker sends this to the web app. So basically the hacker, when there's data in transit, he can add something, he can change certain values, or he can just listen into the connection and perhaps see password flying around, credit card details, anything that usually should be encrypted with data in transit. But maybe he sniffs out the web traffic and he found the keys and he's able to decrypt it some kind of way. And he's sitting man in the middle between the user and the target or the website. An SQL injection is a bit more technical. SQL is standard query language. It has to do with databases. And you can ask a database a certain question, like how many customers do have the first name John? Where do they live? In which state? In which country? So you have this certain structure language, and it's Q standing for query. So you can actually ask the database something, and the database gives you an answer. So a hacker can, here you see user ID, and that user ID is stored inside the database, and he wants to have all the information about all the users. And then the database is not allowed to do that, but just because he knows SQL and the database is not protected in that way, then he can get all the information from all the users. This is a way to capture large amounts of data, customer data, financial data, politically motivated data. The database is not allowed to do that, but it's not protected or configured in a certain way that is not allowed to do this, if it makes sense. So a database is set up that it can do these things, but it's not allowed to do that thing. Only when you are an administrator or you have certain privileges, but when the request is coming from the web server, from the user that goes to the web server and there internalized, it goes to a database server. The user is just a web user, so to speak. He shouldn't have those privileges to do a select all from users, basically. He's only allowed to get the user ID information of this particular user, and the best case would be that this user is the person itself, the user, the user ID that matches the user that actually requested. That's how I should put it. So this returns all the data for all users, and this data is then returned to the attacker. Nowadays, users are basically email addresses. So if he has a couple of thousand email addresses, or maybe let's say 1 million, he can use that for another phishing campaign or something. And email addresses on the black market are not worth a whole lot, but they're worth something, because it's all potential victims again. When you unleash a phishing or spam campaign, whatever you want, you need active email addresses. Then we have cross-site scripting. This also has to do with the database and the database server. Actually, when you click on a link on a website underwater, something like a script can be running, or with the programming language, something is generated. If the user knows what's expected, he can also send a script down to the website, or use let's say a search bar, and then manipulates it with a script. So injecting malicious scripts into websites and then viewed by other users. So you can, let's see, database. So this user is putting stuff on the server, which then puts it into the database, and the database selects all of this and sends it back here. I guess this is the attacker. But with scripting, you can basically let the web server, database server perform certain things that are not allowed, giving you more information that you might want or need. I hope I explained this one correctly, because the SQL injection is for me easy to explain. This is a bit more tricky. Scripts are also basically queries. So asking a server or web server certain information and then letting it return certain data, because that's how web apps work. Zero-day exploitations are vulnerabilities that are not known to the developers yet, so they don't know that a certain web app is at risk. A zero-day, it's not patched yet, so when this comes out in the open, it can be misused and the success rate for a hacker is quite high because it's not patched yet. There's no remedies against it yet. So a security flaw exists, the hacker discovers it. These kind of flaws are shared on the dark web, sometimes involving quite a lot of money. The attack is then launched and the developers attack and have 0 days to mitigate it. Basically make sure that drop all work that they have and now immediately start to see how they can mitigate this attack from happening in the future, patching it and making the web app or whatever it is secure again. Then we have DNS. We have DNS spoofing. That's unfortunate. Okay, let's do this. And DNS is DNS requests. Come on. Sorry, guys. So DNS spoofing. Each time you go to Google or you go to a news website, you're sending a DNS request to a DNS server, which matches the domain name with an IP address. So it's basically, I don't know how old you are, I'm from 85, so I still remember phone books. Basically, a DNS server does the same for the internet. So here a hacker can inject a fake DNS entry, and this user thinks that he makes a legitimate request to a real website, but here it's injected into the phone book, for instance, that it should redirect or resolve to a fake website, which almost looks identical. And the aim is usually to collect user data, so there should be a login form connect to it. And then with this DNS spoofing, for the user, it looks he's go to the same website as he's go before. He thinks it's all cozy because you see this padlock there, thinking it's HTTP encrypted. I'm good. Everything is hunky dory. Let me just fill in my credentials. But the website that is being redirected to is, the hacker owns it, created it. And basically, when you submit your data, it submits it to a database that is controlled by the hacker and then can later be used against you. Let me see. So here, yeah, basically the same thing. But you need to do that with DNS servers, and I just explained that. And DNS spoofing is just a way to redirect users to fake websites. These kind of things will not exist for many days. They will be reported at some point, and then they have to change the DNS entry again. But usually the company that runs these DNS servers, you can use OpenDNS, you can use the DNS that is connected to your internet service provider. You can have your own DNS server setup, basically. It will have to do some investigation. How was it possible that a fake DNS entry was put into their database? But that's all for later. These are the top 8 attacks, cybercrime attacks that still exist in today's world, and they're still being used on a daily basis. So this way you have a better of understanding what it's all about. If you have any questions about a particular type of attack and you want a little bit more explanation, please let me know. And hopefully we can pick up more videos again in the upcoming weeks. Thanks for watching.